I used to have this belief that in order to run, you needed to be skinny, have six-pack abs, and you either had it or you didn't. I started running at 93 kg. I've lifted weights for about 4-ish years now, but I couldn't run a mile if you asked me to. And honestly, I thought running was something heavy guys didn't do. I was dead wrong. Here's what changed. See, I don't even know exactly where this limiting belief came from, that in order to be a quote-unquote runner, you need to be this like skinny or muscular person in order to run. I think just in terms of if you ask maybe an average person, if you ask a regular person, what kind of person do you think of when you say the word runner? You probably think of someone who's quite skinny, maybe got, I don't know, quite long legs. Someone who's skinny, got long legs, probably in shape, and they probably look a little bit like Mo Farah. That's probably the easiest example you can think of. Turns out your frame, your size, doesn't really have much to do with it. Regardless of whether you're super skinny or you're on the other end of the spectrum, you don't need to let these preconceptions or limiting beliefs stop you from starting. Whether you're super skinny or whether you're overweight, you can still run. Regardless of how quick or how fast or slow you go, you can still do it. I'm probably in the minority of people who not only lift weights but also run consistently. So I'm living proof that you're capable of doing both if your heart desires. And what I wanted to say is that regardless of what your starting point is, you can definitely start running regardless of what your starting circumstances are. For example, I'll just hone in on some of the things that happened when I first started running. So when I first started running, I had really bad asthma, and I have done so all my life. So that already infinitely makes it more difficult for me to run. But I still managed to accomplish a fair amount despite these kind of predetermined health conditions I have. Not to mention, I run fairly slow about 80% of the time. And also, I'm much more on the heavy. Well, I was more on the heavier side. I'm a little bit lighter now, but running as a heavier person has its greater challenges than the optimal kind of physique for a runner, which is kind of like lightweight, skinny, which is like people built for endurance and long distance running. That's why you see like professional Olympic athletes, they're quite skinny and not really frail, but they don't carry much mass on them because it keeps you light on your feet and able to run for very long distances like marathons. But even if you don't have that kind of physique, you can still run. You don't need to be this super skinny, kind of nimble looking person in order to run. As long as you just have the mentality and the mindset to say, you know what, I'm not going to let anything stop me from doing what I want to do. You don't need this super perfect physique in order to start. You just need a mindset that will tell you, I'm going to give it a go and I'm going to try it and just see what happens. So in terms of my starting point and what I want to say is, if you're a young man and you're not able to run a mile, I feel like that is something every young man should be capable of doing. And when I first started at 93, 94 kilos, I couldn't run a mile. And I feel like that should be a given. Every young man should be fit enough and able enough to run at least 1 mile. If asked at any given moment, and if you're not able to do it, I would say you need to work on your cardio. Obviously, disregarding if you've got like health conditions or, I don't know, you've got a disability, then obviously that doesn't count. But if you're just if you're a fit and able young man who has a working body and has no real existing health conditions, you should be able to run a mile. I started at 93-ish kilos as a bulked up gym goer, and I could not run a mile. I just didn't have the endurance to run for a mile, which is about 1.6 kilometers. So in order to endure this process, I had like a lot of preconceptions I had when I first started running. And the main ones were that I was a fairly slow runner. Being heavier, that's just what's going to happen really. Don't expect to go too quickly. This is a more of a personal one, but I have dealt with asthma all my life, and up until a few years ago, it kind of cleared up. And I started to feel it a little bit on my runs, but as I got fitter, this kind of went away. And what I wanted to say was, this is more of a personal condition, but that is one of the challenges I've had to face when I started running. That if you've got pre-existing health conditions, obviously, make sure you look after yourself if you're starting running, and ensure that these kind of conditions don't flare up as you're starting to make progress and get better at running. Just make sure to look after yourself and ensure you're taking the right steps to make good progress, and also look after yourself whilst doing so. Not to mention my cardio was never great particularly, and combining both running and lifting together means it's a lot more draining than just lifting, which is what most young guys do and completely neglect cardio. I balanced both, and I think that made me a bit more durable than someone who just lifts, because most young guys, they are actually a bit more impressionable these days, and they're starting to get more into gym culture and are starting to go to the gym now, which is a great thing, but not a lot of young guys are actually doing cardio. So they're lifting heavy weights, they're putting on muscle, which is great, but they're not doing any cardio. So they're putting on all this muscle mass, which is great, but they're not looking after their cardiovascular health, which is just needed for general life and for the health of your heart. This is why you'll see a lot of people in the fitness space just encourage 10,000 steps, and not just for the sake of losing weight, but just for your heart. You need to be active and do cardio just to look after your heart. Your heart is obviously the primary driver of living. So in order to look after it and make sure it's working to its best possibility, ensure that you do cardio in some capacity to look after it, so that you can live a long and healthy life. And the result of kind of getting rid of this limiting belief that you don't need to be in shape to run is that I have become fitter, lighter, healthier, and I've actually accomplished some of my goals, which are to run a 5k, which I did a couple months ago now. And when I started taking running more seriously, this is the first thing I noticed, is that your overall mental capacity and feelings are just so much better, because running isn't just physical, it's also mental. A lot of the times when you go on runs, you will often have this mental battle where you'll be fighting to stay in the run, or you'll be thinking about quitting, and you just gotta have this you've got to just kind of have that trudge through the trenches mentality to stay in it and keep going. And that is one of the things you build over time. As you get more experienced at running, you build up what is called mental fortitude. So when things get harder, you kind of stick through it, you trudge through the trenches, and you just kind of get along with it. I think a common example is, I think some common examples, or the easiest ones to identify, are, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but just to wrap things up, don't let your limiting beliefs stop you from running. You don't need to be this super in shape athlete to run. You can be any shape or size. If you've got the willingness and mentality to try, you will make progress. As long as you stay consistent, stick to the fundamentals, and keep going. And with that being said, that's all I have to say today.